Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Live from Brooklyn, New York, this is Wisdom of the Sages, a daily spiritual podcast with your host, Raghunath, and my co-host is MIA today, but it's interview day, and I have a special co-host, one of my good friends and sisters, Jiva G Life Coaching from the Bhakti Recovery Group. We got a special interview today with Jiva G, and she's a quite wonderful lady, and we've grown very close since the beginning of Wisdom of the Sages. She's very sincere about her spiritual practice and her coming into recovery through the 12-step program, and how the recovery program really works well hand in hand. We're going to talk about that today with the Bhakti Yoga practice. But first, Miss Mara, do we have any announcements? Miss Mara's here spinning the dials, but she's trying to stay off screen.
There's just not enough room for me to be on screen this
You're lying.
Yes. We're holding our annual autumn retreat October 11th through 13th at Super Soul Farm in beautiful upstate New York. We'll have morning and evening satsangs, kirtan, asana classes, workshops, and delicious vegetarian and vegan meals. You can be part of the Wisdom of the Sages podcast live. Go to wisdomofthesages.com to register today.
All right. And special announcement on that Friday, our special guest here, Jiva G, is going to be here. Hey, Jiva G, might as well just say good morning right now. I'm going to bring you into the announcements. How are you?
I'm good. Good morning. Thanks for having me.
Good. You look lovely this morning.
Thank you. I even put mascara on for all of you guys.
You're live in Munich right now, right? Munich, Germany.
I am. I'm in Munich, but I will be coming on Thursday to Philadelphia. Thank you.
Unbelievable. We're all excited.
Yes. Really happy to come.
And then she's going to come to Super Soul, hang with us. And then that Friday, what's the date of that? That Friday, Columbus Day Friday? October 11th, she's going to do a big all-day workshop at Super Soul Farm. So if you're going to the Wisdom of the Sages retreat, come a day early, or come early that Friday, and you can join Jiva. Do we have the times of that?
I think it's 9:30. Starts at 9:30.
9:30, and then there's lunch. So eat breakfast, and then there's lunch. And I think that's going to be great. And I think, what's the price of that, Mayor? It's on the website, Wisdom of the Sages to Ribs. It's something like $100+, $108, $150. I'm not quite sure, but I think it's going to be great. And I think I just want to say, here's the introduction. The native New Yorker living in Germany with her husband, mother, friend, and very, very deep spiritualist. We're honored to have you on the show. The Bhakti Recovery Group is changing lives dramatically. We get messages all the time, and I'm sure you do, but even we do, and we're not the same group. Bhakti Recovery Group and Wisdom of the Sages are two different things. We just work like tag team recovery people, and we're recovering from the material world, really, because the material world can be quite hellish, and we just get so much positive feedback from the work you and all your people are doing. And today we're going to talk a little bit about recovery and how not only how relevant it is to Bhakti, but what a necessity is. This morning, off camera, off the phone, Jiva and I were talking about how, sometimes it just doesn't fit within, living in an ashram like the old days. And she was getting a little discouraged. And we're not going to get into this in detail, but I will say what you're doing for Krishna Consciousness 2.0, we 2.0 was, because I was with some old devotee friends of mine yesterday, and they were saying, it was weird. It's like if you couldn't follow up to a star, you just weren't in the club.
Yeah.
And what I feel like what you're doing, a big part of what you're doing is you're taking a chainsaw and just making the door very, very big. You're making the gates more like inclusive. The community is more inclusive, and not that we shouldn't still try to raise the bar, but that it's sort of a come as you are, and work with what you got, and lean in towards Krishna, towards spirit, towards truth, towards life, towards love, when things are feeling south, when your
Yeah.
when your some scars are pulling you in dark directions. So Jiva, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Raghu. Actually, I don't need to say anything more. You've said it all. You really have. It was wonderful. Thank you for saying it just that way. It's beautiful, really.
And you can you give a short synopsis of maybe real short, because people know your
Mhm.
story a little bit, a little short about how you got into recovery, how you got into Bhakti.
Okay. So, I'm a hardcore kid. Grew up running the streets since I was like 11 and 12. Like I had no rules. I was allowed out at 11 and 12 until like 2 in the morning. I was just out.
Growing up
And
in New York City, you grow up fast.
yeah, you really do. And most of my friends were 16, 17. And of course, they were into other stuff, And my dad entrusted me, entrusted those teenagers with, they always walked me home and stuff like that. But, they were into other things. They were into hard drugs and they were into other stuff that I, of course, wanted to fit in.
Sure.
So anyway, I started to get into about 11, 12, started getting into smoking weed, drinking. And then by the time I was like 14, I had already dropped acid and mescaline, and I was hanging out downtown, on the Lower East Side. I wasn't doing anything, those quote unquote harder drugs until a little bit later. I was, when my parents split up, my mom moved to this really bougie suburb in Irvington, New York. And this is a really interesting story. We moved
Were you from a wealthy family, a middle class family?
Well, my family were artists. So both of my parents were actors. So year to year was different. Sometimes we
Right.
had tons of money and sometimes we had none.
So you grew
And
up on the Upper East Side.
Upper West Side, don't
Upper
ever
West
say
Side.
Upper East Side.
Sorry.
No, I'm only kidding. No, the Upper West Side. I grew up on the Upper West Side. Very mixed bag, where I grew up.
Sure. Okay,
And
continue. Sorry, I hijacked you.
yeah, no
Continue
worries.
on. When did hard drugs kick in? When did addiction kick in?
I would say at 18, 19 years old. Hard drugs started at 19. And I discovered heroin. And it came from I started hanging around with that whole cop shoot cop, that whole
Oh yeah, I remember that.
Remember that?
I didn't know what they were. Cop
Yeah,
shoot cop.
it's just that whole I don't know if anyone knows any about it's Richard Kern, that whole weird Lower East Side arty junkie, Sonic Youthy kind of.
Yeah. It was just the Lower East Side was a hip a weirdo collective. So hardcore was weird, goth was weird, just this weird noise music was weird, weird street art was weird. And part of weird was taking drugs. And straight edge was weird too. So it was sort of like we were just all in a bowl together, like a mixed salad.
Totally.
And so go
the
ahead.
funny thing is that I always appreciated straight edge. I never was straight edge. I always thought that it was super cool to be straight edge. I never ever had a problem with that because I always knew that it's better.
Right. Oh, that's interesting. Your intuition.
I always knew that it was better. Yeah. So eventually, after 10 years of using, 11 years of hardcore using, I hit a hideous bottom. I found myself in Berlin, homeless. Wow. I had a protection order against me, not so that I couldn't come within 1,000 yards of my house where my daughter was living with her father.
Wow.
Yeah, it was it was Berlin. It was February.
Berlin was also a sort of a crazy place back then too. If I remember.
Totally. It was like New York continued because New York started to get yuppie-ish, but Berlin was like the Lower East Side continuum. It was a continuum of that. And
you were on tour with Gorilla Biscuits that year, right? And
oh yeah, well that was yeah. I was living already in Berlin, but I was on tour with Gorilla Biscuits. Yeah,
in that first European tour. Okay, so then you hit some bottom, and how did you find out about recovery? And how did recovery
Well,
move you
I
on your
used to,
positive path?
okay. So before the Berlin thing, before I went to Berlin, I went to my first NA meeting. And I was playing in a band called Karen Black, and I was playing bass for this band called Karen Black.
Yeah.
And Kembra and Samoa, who is the singer and the guitar player, they're in recovery. They were in recovery. I think they're still in recovery. And we played a show in Boston. And I got so drunk, I fell into the drum kit and I couldn't play anymore. And they were super pissed at me. But they were really nice. And so they brought me to a meeting. That was my
Wow.
very first meeting, Lower East Side Artists meeting. I think it's still there.
Wow.
And I put it in my back pocket and I thought, this is a great place, but I'm not ready.
Sure.
Yeah,
You have
Greg
to-
Dickies with
it
the Love
seems,
Cruise hard.
like the Bhagavatam says, to make advancement in spiritual life, you must become materially exhausted. And I love that phrase. The first time I heard it, you have to understand, like, there's nothing for me here. And how do you get to that place? After Bahunam Janamamante, after many births and deaths. And let's face it, you and I in this life have had many births and deaths. And you have to get to this point of like, I'm exhausted with this material world, and I'm not exhausted, going to wake up tomorrow and be like, well, let me give it another try. You have to be fully exhausted. So a big part of, I think, our spiritual life is really contemplating how there's nothing here for me. There's something, there's a God-shaped hole that I've been shoving everything in except God.
Exactly.
Except God. Maybe it's travel, maybe it's adventure, maybe it's being a roadie, maybe it's singing for a band, maybe it's, maybe clean myself up, get my material life together. Maybe it's a financial level I got to get to, and then I'm going to be okay. Maybe it's the perfect person, the perfect romance, the perfect love, the perfect sex.
I've been through all of it. I have been through all of that. Every single bit of it. I've devoured everything. I have the disease of I want more.
Sure.
The thing is, it's funny when you said that, because at the very last paragraph at the 12 and 12, this is an AA book. It's the 12 traditions, the 12 steps in 12 traditions. The very last paragraph in step 1, it says, we become willing as only the dying can be. And that is where I needed to be. So my bottom was a pretty hardcore bottom.
Sure.
It involved all kinds of criminal acts and stuff that I didn't want to do. I had been, for the last months before I hit my bottom, have crossed every single standard and line that I said I would never cross. Wow. Every single thing where I said, I won't do this, I did this. Everything I said, I'll never do that, and I did that. Everything. And when I was alone on a February evening, just got arrested, got let out of jail. It was a beautiful day. It was one of those, there's this day sometimes in February where it's just like 20 degrees Celsius, where it's like totally warm, and then it just gets freezing cold. So it was like one of those days, 1 a.m, I get released from jail. I have a teeny, like this long sleeve t-shirt on, really thin. It starts snowing. It's 1 a.m. I go down to try to get some dope. There's nothing there.
You get out of jail and you go back to getting dope. That's the crazy thing. Of
course. Are you crazy? Of course. Of course, I was a good addict, that's insanity.
You're dedicated. That's
yes,
insanity,
I'm very,
right?
I'm
That's a
determined.
definition of insanity.
Exactly. So what had happened that night was I looked down that street where there was nothing going on, and it just started snowing, and the street lights were burning, and there was this beautiful snow falling in the rays of the light and frosting the street. And I just had this, and it was, how sometimes when it starts snowing, the streets become like in a studio where you don't have sound, it gets that.
Yes. It's almost like muted. Like
yes.
It's like you're in a studio with these headphones on where you can't hear anything.
And the soundproof stuff, like all the soundproof stuff. So it was like that. And I was just like, and I was watching this, and this thought came from God and said, this can't be the rest of my life. And I turned around and I went to a phone booth in the days of phone booths. This was 1997. I went to the phone booth and I called my dad collect. And I said, Dad, I have to come home.
Oh.
And 4 days later, I went home and I kicked.
Every father is
And-
crying right now, including myself. I'm breaking down right now. Oh my God. Hare Krishna.
Yeah. And my dad, of course, my dad loved me. You know, we had a very special relationship, my dad and I. He would have done anything for me to my detriment, you know, to my
Right.
detriment. He was seriously enabling and codependent, and like he would do anything.
It's so weird. Codependency is so weird. And maybe we could just touch on that a little bit.
Oh, we're gonna.
Because codependency is one of these things. It doesn't, it's like it's a monster in disguise as a lamb, you
It
know,
really is.
because it's the good parent, the loving spouse that wants to support, but they don't know how to support. Their compass is so off. So if my partner wants to drink alcohol instead of, you know, and the hard time with drugs or alcohol, and they hit a rock bottom and they just say, you know, I can't believe I'm in jail. You got to get me out of jail. And I'm like, okay, how can I borrow the money to get them out of jail? And then get them out of jail and they go back to jail. Hey, you got to help me. This time I'm going to be clean. I swear I'm going to be clean. Just if you can get me out of jail. And it goes on and on like this. And you think you're helping, but
And
you're
you're not.
enabling. We see this happen with anyone who's raised a teenager, and you want to support the teenager, but you don't want to like cripple them or enable them
Exactly.
from moving forward in their life.
Very fine. You need to be fine tuned with that. And, you know, I think there isn't a handbook for parents.
There is some
parenting,
good
you know?
codependency books, you know.
Oh,
Yeah.
absolutely.
The Melanie Beattie books are, you got one right with you, huh? Which
Right
one? I
there.
can't see. What does that say?
This is the Codependency 12 steps.
Oh, wow. That's Melody Beattie. Melody Beattie
Yeah.
also wrote Codependence No More.
Yes, exactly.
Right. And these are great things about people who are not good in the name of wanting to help, in the name of wanting to serve, in the name of wanting to support.
Yes.
They compromise their own sanity, truthfully. It's not like
that's what happens. That's what happens. So, you know, the thing is, after I had, and these are the layers, and these are all the layers that I think every addict has, and every recovering addict has. We find out all this stuff, you know, through recovery. We first have to get clean and sober. So for me, that meant going to a program, and I knew that NA and AA were the places for me. I knew this, and I immediately started going, and I immediately took to the program, and I immediately understood within, I would say, I had a burning bush experience with God. I was raised atheist. My dad would mock anyone who believed in God or religion. It was for him the most ridiculous thing. It's all about science. My dad was an artist and I would say very smart, you know.
Yeah, academic types or
exactly.
Collegiate types. A fashionable thing is to be anti-God. It's like, oh, that's for the foolish. That's for the sentimental. It's not for the intellectual. Not for the intellectuals.
Yeah, he said it's primitive. Religion is primitive. It's a primitive thing.
It's so primitive. It's the ultimate primitive.
Yes,
they've been doing it forever.
I know. So after I hit that bottom, like let's get into the recovery. So, you know, the recovery bit, you know, I have to say, in hindsight, it's been 27 years. I'm 27 years clean and sober. And I hit a second bottom in my recovery around 17 or 18 years of sobriety from codependency. And it was excruciating. I had been living a life trying to please everyone and trying to make up for all the bad things that I've had by being codependent with my child, being codependent with my husband at the time. You know, it was like, I will give my will and my life over to the care of anyone who takes responsibility. You know, like, I don't want to, like, it was really having the husband that I had at that time. It was I would say what could happen if, okay, let me just erase that. I gave my will and my life over to the care of him as he understood himself and as he understood his program. And he was also in the program. And so I really tried to the best of my ability to figure out who I was. And I did it through him.
Wow.
I did it through him. He was the one to show me, you know, how I'm supposed to act, because he was like a normal person. He was raised in a normal family doing normal things, you know, and
Sure.
and I figured that's what I wanted, because I had no idea what I wanted. No idea. And then I resented him for it.
Right. And that's the
And
pattern.
that's the pattern.
What's the classic codependent pattern? You allow, which it's a triangle.
You allow the things to happen, you become resentful, and then you lash out.
Right.
And this is something, and
Right.
this
Instead
is
of sending, let me just
yes, please.
focus in on that. You allow things to happen. My wife or my husband is not paying me appropriate child support, but I'm instead of like putting a boundary, no, we're gonna go to court, we're gonna set it up. This is the child support you owe me, you know. But instead, I'm just due to my own like sort of like situation, I'm not holding you accountable that, but I just say whatever, and then when he doesn't pay me the child support,
You're
then
totally angry and upset.
then I get angry, upset, I lose my cool, and then how does this triangle work? Talk me through this. Yeah, it's like we don't help me out here.
Well, it becomes this addictive behavior. So you just become, first of all, you have to go back into how it starts. It starts with valuing yourself less than you do the next person, the person that you have with you. And you will do anything to be accepted. You will do anything to, that's one form of codependency. There are other forms of codependency where, you know, you might not be a people pleaser, but you're a moper. People don't understand that when somebody's moping and being passive aggressive, that is a manipulation to manipulate someone else. And I do it. I'm guilty as charged. A manipulation, when I can't do something, like with my husband now, if I can't do something, like if I can't figure out like something on the computer, I'll be like, eh. And then like, you know, I expect him to come in and help me instead of saying, sweetie, I'm sorry, can you please help me? You know, and then when he doesn't help me, I can get pissed.
My dad would do that too. It's a type of it's complete manipulation. And it's just maybe they don't have the tools to get out of it. Maybe they don't have the. Maybe they just. Maybe they just. I don't know, depressed or something. They can't get out of it. But whatever it is, it's like withdrawing love to get what you want. There's so many better ways to get love, to get help, to reach out, into withdrawing all emotion. Sometimes, you know, people go into they stop talking. They just give the silent treatment.
This is like the ACA stuff. This is the adult child of alcoholic and dysfunctional family. And that's what I'm really diving into right now. And a lot of people in the Bhakti recovery group at the moment, we're really diving into this ACA stuff. Like that's kind of like a lot of our meetings are ACA based. I'm working with a lot of sponsees on the ACA program, trying to figure out what those things are, you know, and working through them, because those are the things that are going to block me from Krishna consciousness. Those are the things that's going to block me, you know, all that kind of behavior, those repetitive behaviors, those things, those compulsory behaviors, those samskaras, everything from this life and from our past lives are going to hinder us to get closer to Godhead. For me, I know that if I don't work my program, I can just forget Krishna consciousness. That's how life-saving it is for me. There is no messing around. I'm not like, you know, dancing around in ballet at a 12-step program. My 12-step program is my lifeline. You know,
you know, people want a quick fix to things, a real quick fix. They want to join a religion. They want to take a magic pill. They want to be saved. And the thing I respect about you and people going through a 12-step program is that we are works in progress. And it would be nice if I could just join a club and now I'm saved and my soul is saved and God loves me and there's perfection there. But it ain't that easy. There's a lot of polishing. There's a lot of detailing of the vehicle.
Well, first you got to, sorry, go ahead.
I was going to say, well, you know, especially if you've had either traumatic past or you've interpreted your past. Sometimes people haven't had such a traumatic past, but they've
No.
interpreted it as traumatic.
Well,
You know,
yeah,
I
it
know
affected
people.
them. People get affected by the craziest things,
Yeah,
you know?
I've had people who've had really traumatic past, but they can deal with the material world well. But like
Mhm.
whatever you went through, you could not deal with the material world, or you got into a slippery slope with some very high addictive drug, and it created chaos in your life. And if you've had that
Absolutely.
chaos, if you've lived that trauma, if you've been through hell and back, and you cannot cope, or you're on your knees praying to God, take me or I'm going to die, then a 12-step program will help you, because it seems like what we do as addicts is we create so much and we become so self-absorbed in getting our own needs met
Yeah.
that we start to hate and we start to
Mhm.
resent. And then what it does is it creates, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, so I'm just speculating here just from my observation and study of
Well,
this.
I believe that
You
you have the personality of being an addict. You just
Oh,
never
I
became
totally have
one.
the personality of being.
You
I'm
just never
addicted with
became one in a
everything I
substance.
do.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
But with all that resentment and all that hate and all that self-absorption, you create almost like a lead bubble around you to evolve in
Mm.
your bhakti. And I've seen this happen in practitioners of bhakti, where they become very, very meek, very, very humble. And there's a flip side of that, which is that meek and humbleness is more self-loathing than it actually is really humility. It's a
Yes.
self-loathing meets deep steeped arrogance to make up for their self-loathing. And they ping pong back and forth between self-hate and I'm the best,
Yes.
baddest dog, head of the pack.
That's the bruised ego. That is, and what we need is freedom from the false self. And
Mm.
being humble for me is being the right size. How do we make ourselves
Sure.
the right size? How do you make yourself the right
Yeah, I like
size?
that. Make yourself
You
the right
know,
size.
you got to be the right size. It's the right size. I actually just did a shorty on that. It's going to be released tomorrow about being
Bhakti
the right
Recovery. I
size.
just put this out there. If you don't know, Bhakti Recovery is a podcast that Jiva does regularly. They also have these podcast shorties, which are little miniature snippets of podcasts. And so we highly recommend everybody right now to go to Apple Podcasts and subscribe right now. Just do that right now if
that
you're
would be
listening.
nice. That would be nice.
Yeah,
Thank you.
and it's a great thing also if you know a person who's in recovery, but don't know Krishna, because the thing is, you can go into a 12-step group, and I get it, and this makes sense, and this is why me and Kostuba will argue about this on a regular basis. But check this out. My thing is Bill Wilson. Actually, the entire Hare Krishna community might like argue with me. I
Let
say
them.
Bill Wilson, Bill W. Right, that's his name.
Bill W.
Is a Shakti Vaishya avatar.
I,
Meaning
I,
he
I,
came and he was empowered by God to save people's lives.
hell yeah.
And
I'm totally.
how could I can't understand how Kostuba would argue with that, but
Well,
he
you know
does.
what?
He
It's not,
does.
you know, it's not bona fide like in that way, you know, and this is the thing. Why did I start the Bhakti Recovery Group? I mean,
Like-
first of all, it was a very selfish thing when I started the Bhakti Recovery Group. And
Yeah.
the story about that was this, that I had noticed going to regular 12-step meetings is a great thing. And I would never have been here without my 12-step program.
Mm.
But when I hit that second bottom, because we were going to go into that before, when I hit that second bottom and I got a divorce and he took everything, you know, he took the washing machine, he took the dryer, and I let him take everything because I just didn't want to have a fight.
Sure.
Go with God, but just go, please. And
Go with God.
it's a German expression. It's so great. I love it.
Go with God, but just go.
Yeah. Isn't it great? Isn't that great? Geh mit Gott, aber geh. So when that happened, I really knew that I better get myself a pretty damn strong higher power, because I was just like Draupadi.
If you don't know Draupadi's the queen. She was getting publicly stripped in front of everybody. And she just reached out, her hands in the air. Oh, Krishna, I trust you. No one is here to save me except you.
And this was the second time in my life that it got to be like that. So I had my bottom in addiction, and I found God, the strongest possible relationship, it was a burning bush experience. It was first I admitted I was powerless over drugs and alcohol. My life had become unmanageable. I admitted that.
This is the first step, right? This is the first
That's
step.
the first step.
Share the first step with everybody.
Okay, the first step is we admit we're powerless over addictions, and our lives had become unmanageable. BRG is addictions and associated behaviors.
Sure.
And that our lives had become unmanageable. So basically, you have to get to that point where you're not. So here's the difference. A lot of people have a big problem with the word powerless. Now, I want to explain the difference between powerlessness and helplessness.
Okay.
Two very different things. If you're standing, if you hear on the radio, hey, there's a tsunami coming in the next half an hour, you're powerless over that tsunami. That
Sure.
tsunami you're powerless. It's going to happen, period. But in the moment that you know it's coming, and the moment that you can get out of your house and you can leave, there you're not helpless. So even if you're powerless over a power greater than yourself, you're not helpless to do something about it, which means we're not responsible for our disease. We are responsible for our recovery. We're not responsible for Maya. We're not responsible for illusionary energy, but we are responsible for Krishna consciousness. If we want to be, of course, if we choose to be.
Sure.
But that's what we take responsibility for. And this is what the program is about for me now, taking responsibility for my life and not being a victim and not being a victim of circumstance. There are times I'm powerless, but I am never helpless. Even if it feels that way, I am never helpless because today I have a choice. I have a choice.
Sure.
And that's the freedom.
Kryptonite is going to kill you, but you have the option to not pick up the kryptonite, not walk into the room with the kryptonite, not hang out with people hanging out with kryptonite.
Yeah, exactly. You can make choices. You have a choice. And that's what they mean by having a choice today. You have the freedom to make a choice. Now, even if it's just later on in life with emotions, I struggled with my own emotions and my crazy thinking. And today, because of Krishna consciousness, I have a choice to say, stop. I have a choice to say, no, this is a perception. This is something that this is a conditioning, and I have a choice to think differently. And it's not, and this is the thing, it is not something that I can think my way into. If I want to change something, I do something. It's tangible. And that's what the 12 steps are. That's what Bhakti is. It's tangible. We chant, we read, we listen, we do kirtan, we have sangha. We do the same thing in recovery. We do the things that we need to do in order to recover. It's 24 hours a day. My disease is 24 hours a day. Maya is 24 hours a day. If I think, this is for me, if I think that I can give a half an hour a day and think that everything's going to be fine, then I'm sorely mistaken. My brain wants me out there doing stupid shit. Excuse my language.
It's okay. I get it. What I like about 12 steps is it's similar. There's rules of the road. There's parameters. There's fences, guardrails, etc. And I think anyone who's an addict, and this is why I like dealing with 12-step people, recovery people, for they're deep thinkers. And this whole idea that you hear from a lot of people, like, I need my own space. I need my freedom to do as I like. Those who are in 12-step recovery, they're like, no, I don't. They don't trust their own choices. They don't trust their own mind. They like parameters. They appreciate the discipline. But what you've done with Bhakti recovery is in the very vague, ambiguous, which I understand people need it because people have had hideous relationships with God in growing up, and therefore the way it was presented in 12 steps is like, okay, listen, you should got to understand you're powerless. There is a higher power. You pick anything to be your higher power. You pick this mug. Let that be your higher power. You pick anything. It's a higher power of your choice. And some people need to say, you know what, this mug's my higher power. They need to say something almost like silly. But what it does, I feel, and you correct me if I'm wrong, is it gets you out of thinking like you know everything. It's all your intelligence.
Anything can be a higher power, just as long as it's not me.
Right. And if
you got yourself as a sponsor, you got the worst sponsor ever.
Right, because we're steeped in arrogance. And when you start to fulfill your senses addictively, that is the very definition of materialism. It's me.
There we go.
First.
There we go. But see, there we go. And this is where people shy away from coming to the Bhakti recovery group because I think it's just for addicts. It isn't. It's for people with anarthas. We all have them, and we all grapple with something. We all grapple with the mind. We grapple with sense gratification, extreme sense gratification, whether it's food, whether it's, doesn't matter what it is. If we have that, I want more disease, then we have that with anything that we enjoy.
Sure.
And this is where I see in recovery. And see, when you said just now about not deciding for ourselves, the longer I'm in recovery, the more I can trust myself to a certain degree. But when I make big decisions, I talk to people. I call you all the time if I have to make a big decision. You know, you're very accountable. I think you naturally think like a 12-stepper. And I also have someone in the States I call who's in the 12-step program for 40 years. And I call her and ask her for, the big things,
I always say that whenever there's big decisions, I don't leave it up to my own intelligence. Why?
No.
Because we can get polluted with our own desires. And sometimes my desires don't have my best interest in mind. Write that one down, Mara. Sometimes my desires
that's keeping the right size. You're being the right size. You're being the right size. When you have that kind of decision, that's the right size. I'm not, I can't, I make this decision by myself. Do you know how many, it's like dumb decisions, stupid decision, rash decisions, 7,647 today, I bought a house just 4 years ago in the Dominican Republic. Put a down payment on. Yes, I put a down payment on it and then backed out because I just decided I wanted it, and then I decided I didn't want it and lost the down payment.
You dumb.
Yeah, but see, those are the things that I'll do.
I think I remember that. Yeah.
Well, it's because I don't think I said it to anyone. I just said it in public now, but it was so embarrassing.
You told it to me. You know what?
Christ.
You know why? Because we have some desire. Yes, and we have some desire of how we'll be happy. And when you check in with a person who is actually, their full-time job is to cultivate wisdom, and then when you throw your desire against them, they'll say you're on track, or I understand where you're going with this, but you're off track. Like if you were to ask me that right now, I'm thinking about getting a house in the Dominican Republic. Sounds great on paper. Hey, the rat race, living in Germany, living in New York, get out to the beach, fresh air. But for a person practicing Bhakti, we'd say, what's the devotee community like there?
There isn't any.
Yeah. You and in the biggest picture, that's what that's our lifeline. It's not a pristine beach. It sounds like it should be a pristine beach. No, it's what's the devotee community?
Exactly.
Who are you going to be hanging out with on a regular basis?
So, the thing is, and this is the thing, and this is the thing, and this is what I was talking about. Each year that I'm in recovery, and each step I do, and each person, and more service I do, and the more people that I have one condition on every sponsee that I have. And I think some of my sponsees are here today. There's only one condition. And that is, if I take you through those 12 steps, you have to take someone else through those 12 steps. And I don't care if it's the Bhakti recovery group. I don't care if it's regular NA or regular AA. I don't care, but you need to give it.
I didn't want to go here, but this is so important. And I don't feel like I'm a great devotee, and I don't feel like I'm very advanced, but I feel like I get special blessings because I'm very, very focused on trying to cultivate Bhakti and trying to give it to other people. And that's been like number one on my mind when I wake up in the morning, how to spread Bhakti. And I think when you do that, you get special mercy from the parampara, from your succession of teachers going back millennia, because that desire to want to give it to another person, and not from like, I want to give it because I'm so much more evolved than you. No, I feel like I've inspired people to get into Bhakti that are much more advanced than me. They just didn't know they were devotees. Yeah. So it's not like
mostly.
And so this is both, again, hand in hand with the 12-step recovery. The 12th step is, say it. The 12th step. The 12th step.
The 12th step. That is, after having a spiritual awakening as a result of these steps, we try to carry this message to others who are still suffering.
Yeah. And this is Prabhupada, the Guru Purush. You know,
Yes.
right? The Guru Purush, Prabhupada
Yes.
is like, okay, and we know the story if you've been practicing bhakti within the ISKCON context. Prabhupada was sitting fine, a pure devotee, living in Vrindavan, and then he packed up his stuff, got a little suitcase, had like whatever,
And went to
$6 in his
Tompkins Square
pockets,
Park.
got on a cargo ship and figured out, I'm going to give this away. And that's what makes
Yes.
him the Guru Purush. That's what makes him this acharya that will go down in history books, that he's given
Mhm.
bhakti and he's risked his life and to give it to other people. And in that you get so much love and so much blessings. And
You know,
it's part of our own recovery. And
yeah,
I've noticed
it is.
I get out of my own head and my issues, because a lot of times you can't advance if you're always worried about, here's my shortcomings here, here's my shortcomings there. And you start really looking at people who are really struggling, and you extend some love, and you get out of your own way.
Absolutely. And that's really key. I mean, if we have like all the steps, we have the steps that we're powerless, the first step, the second step, we come to believe that our power greater than ourselves can restore us to sanity. And that was for me, my burning bush. That finally, not me, not you, not a meeting, not freaking institution, not the schools or my parents or
Sure.
anyone else
Sure.
could restore me to sanity. And it was only a
Sure.
power greater than myself. And that was, for me, it was like past lives and the heaviness of my whole life dropped off of my shoulders when I realized that there was a power greater than myself that could restore me to sanity, and that I could have even a relationship with that higher power. And this was the point in my recovery where I literally, I think I fell to my knees and wept and wept and wept, because it was just the most powerful moment I think I have ever experienced.
Sure.
It was as if like Jesus would float down with his hands open, you know, like Krishna, all the gods, you know. I mean, as far as at that time, you know, it wasn't God specific.
That's your, let's call it the Draupadi, the burning bush moment. It's the Draupadi moment when you just hit
It
the
was the
knees and
Draupadi
reach your
moment.
hands up. And preparing for a drag race, you can fine tune the engine. You can make sure the tires are in good shape. You can make sure the steering's tight, but ultimately you got to drive that car. And
Yeah.
so a temple, joining a religion, going to Sunday schools or a Sunday feast or a satsang or a kirtan, ultimately you got to drive this car yourself. And no one's
Yeah.
going to get you across that finishing line
No.
except you. And that's a day-to-day choice of your spiritual life. And we have some responsibility in that. And so it would be nice if there was just a club I could join. Those clubs can help you. They can like check your tires, so to speak. They can, lube up your car, but you got to drive that car, and you got to deal with your own personal demons of that car. And this is what I feel like you're doing. Now, we took the 12-step ambiguous, this mug can be God, this keychain can be God, anything but you. But in Bhakti Recovery, we replaced that keychain, this ambiguous, vague higher power, with a specific name, and that's Sri Sri Radha and Krishna.
And
Krishna
what we
is our
do,
higher power.
yes, and what we do is we read 12-step literature and Vedic literature. We read anything from Prabhupada. We read all kinds of, each meeting has their own books, and we read, we have about 15 minutes of reading of, let's say, Nectar of Instruction, which is one of my favorite books. And
Great book.
Yeah, the best. And yeah, and I don't know, like the 12 and 12 from Alcoholics Anonymous, or the basic text from NA, or, the adult children of alcoholics, or CODA meetings. So we do that. And we all of us frequent each other's meetings. An adult child will come to an AA meeting, and an AA person will go to an NA meeting. Why? Because we know addiction is addictions, anarthas are anarthas, and we look for the similarities and not the differences.
Okay, so I just want to clarify, because some people get this confused. If you're coming from a 12-step meeting, this is not AA. This is not NA.
We are not affiliated with AA or NA or any of those others.
And so sometimes we do break some of the formats. And and I get it. People they like a straight line, and you do break the lines a little bit. We break the
I
lines
do.
from the get-go by saying there's a specific higher power. That's
Yeah, of
Krishna
course.
is the higher power. Right there, you broke one of the traditions.
Oh
That
yeah,
being
I
said,
broke
the
a lot of those
format
traditions like that. Yes.
that being said, the format and the 12 steps are still very useful. So if you're coming in being like, hey, this isn't how they do it in AA, no, it's not going to be. I'm just going to clarify that, because
Thank you for
there's some people,
clarifying that.
yeah,
It
that's
is
very
like that.
important to understand, because some people are already coming in. But if you're new to it, you'll find this incredibly refreshing, especially if you've had some trauma. I've lived in ashrams where I've dealt with, other brahmacharis who I didn't realize at the time, but they were sex addicts, or they were alcoholics, or they're coming from
Yep.
drug addict, and they need some special attention. And we didn't get it. We just like, just chant your rounds. What do you mean you got an addiction? Just chant. And some people need to do a little bit more work before they can even get to that point, because they
Absolutely.
won't be able to focus on the holy name.
Exactly.
Their
And
focus is
being
too.
yes,
Go
but
on.
being in a 12-step program doesn't mean we stir the stew of self-pity and only look at our character defects and only look at that stuff. We look at them, we name them, we pray about them, and we release them to God.
Sure.
We do not lounge in our discomfort. That is not what we want to do. We want to be able to progress, and I have to say, my ceiling is someone else's floor. Do you understand what I mean when I say that?
Explain that.
Ceiling is someone else's floor. That means, I think, and this is what I truly believe about Bhakti and about the 12 steps and any kind of spiritual advancement. We need to have acceptance about where we are at any given time in our spiritual practice, or in our spirituality, or in our self-awareness. If we are not aware to a certain degree, so let's say like Radha Swami he's 2 flights up from me. Yeah. And I'm down here, and I'm me. I'm the one. I came here with my karma, with the things, my anarthas, and the things that I have to deal with in order to get somewhere. It doesn't help me to compare myself with someone else and say, well, look at them. They can do this perfectly. Why can't I do this perfectly?
Sure.
The thing is,
the more
somebody's floor is my ceiling. I'm doing the best I can with what I got.
And
I can
here's a deal. If you've been around this game for a while, you realize that sometimes people present one way.
Oh yeah.
And they're just not. They have a whole secret life going on.
Oh my God, totally. I mean?
So it's sort of like everybody's a unique, handcrafted individual.
Yes.
With their own attachments, desires, proclivities. And I can't expect, like, because I love Kastuba. He's a great guy, a great devotee. He's got a heart of gold. But for Raghunath, for Ray Capo to become him, that's not a win. That's not a home run for me. I'll never be that, and that's okay.
You're just different. Yes.
And sometimes when you see someone who's he's perpendicular and parallel like that, and we meet a devotee or a guru, and like, I just want to be like that. You might never be like that, and that's still okay. There's still room for you. There's a way that you're going to be God conscious that is much different. And sometimes I can see, because almost we present that as perfection, and it's not necessarily perfect. It's not necessarily perfection for you. What Arjuna was doing is much different than what a Brahmin was doing.
Exactly. Beautifully put. And even if I look at my own recovery, 10 years ago, my ceiling was my floor. Right. And my floor was my ceiling. And now I'm walking on that ceiling that I thought 10 years ago. When I first got into recovery, my only requirement, the only thing that I was fully okay with it. Sure. No drugs, no alcohol. Illicit sex, yes. Red Bulls, yes. Coffee, yes. Cigarettes, yes. Going to clubs, yes. Everything was a yes, except for not doing drugs and alcohol. That was the only thing. And I was happy until I started getting a taste of a better life. And then those things slowly couldn't serve me anymore. And slowly I let go of those things. Slowly they were taken from me. Slowly I let go of them. And I had higher and higher tastes and Krishna consciousness.
This is not a 12-step analogy. This is a 12-step analogy, but not a Vaishnav analogy. But they say there's different layers of that onion. You got to peel that onion back, and then there's a
Totally,
new layer
totally.
underneath. I like saying the gobstopper because
Yeah, I love the
you know, these
Godstopper one. Yeah.
childhood
God, I love those. Did you love
sucker
those?
balls. I love them.
So
And
did
then
I.
you would lick it, and then the gobstopper would change color because there was layers and layers of
Of
colors
different
underneath.
colors.
Yeah. And so that's what we are. We're sort of peeling away these layers of false selves, false
Yeah.
desires, false passions. And there's a real passions. There is a God shape a God-shaped hole in the heart. And there's nothing that will fulfill that except God. And that's where you're
Nothing.
leading everybody. And that's where the 12-step program is leading everyone. Before we wrap up,
Mhm.
because time flies when I'm hanging with you.
Oh yeah, totally. It's been an hour. That's crazy.
How do people join the Bhakti recovery group? And I just want everybody to know it's not for people like, oh, you're living on the street, you're on your knees crying, you're about to shoot up. It's for you. No, it's for people who feel like they've got some low ceilings in their spiritual life and they can't get away
Yes.
from this. Maybe it's self-hate. Maybe it is a hardcore addiction. Maybe it's just self-hate, intense
Yes.
codependency, not good with boundaries. Anything else you want to share for people who would work
Having
well with?
dysfunctional families and having, make people pleasing. That's a big one, especially in the devotee community.
Sure.
Yes. Service until I'm burnt out. And
And
no
then
boundaries.
and then you hate the
them.
devotees.
Oh,
And then you hate
totally.
the devotees.
Totally.
You've given
Totally.
yourself them, you've allowed them, and then you resent them for it.
Yeah, exactly. And there we go. And that's that's the perfect thing.
That's that triangle we were talking about.
Exactly. And that's what we talk about at the CODA meetings. That's what we talk about at the ACA meetings. And, all of the readings that we read in all of these literatures, people have been doing this for years. I've seen people enter the Bhakti Recovery Group who are still there from day one, and they have grown to these wonderful people. I'm so happy to see the growth in these people. It's just insane. When I see it's just insane. And it's not me, it's the program. It's the program. And I wanted to be very clear. I'm glad you said that. We're not traditional 12-step. If you are shooting up and on the street, I do recommend you go to a regular 12-step meeting and come also to Bhakti Recovery Group to get the higher power part. But you really need, I wouldn't recommend, and if you have severe trauma and you want to kill yourself and suicide, go get professional help, of course. But we are here for people who and it's really this simple. You love Krishna consciousness, you love recovery, come join us, and we'll do it together. We're a great Sangha. It's really wonderful at the moment. We're kind of a smaller group at the moment. We're about 12 solid people, maybe 15. And
but there's a lot of people out there that are getting benefit. Maybe 12 are really working it hard, but there's a lot of people.
That's what I mean.
Yeah.
Well, I mean the regulars, but there are people who always come in and out. But there's a solid 15 real regular people, who come all the time, and it's really, really beautiful to watch. And I'm really happy.
How can they join?
You go. Someone I think Gopali just wrote in the chat, www.bhaktirecoverygroup.com. And also they can go to Wisdom of the Sages. It's on there too. Just I think there's a link to our website.
Yeah.
And before we go quickly,
there's a list of meetings they can join.
There's a list of meetings. Yes, there's a list of meetings. And like I said, every meeting is open except for the women's and men's meeting. You have to be a woman to go to the women's meeting and a man to go to the men's meeting.
Okay.
So, but all the other meetings are open. Even if it says AA meeting, even if you're an ACA, come. Even if you're just curious, come, because it's just about recovery, and all meetings are open. We don't close the meetings.
It's on another question. It's on Zoom. So
it's on Zoom.
Is it anonymous or no? Can you put your face? You have to put your face on there or no? How does that work?
We prefer it. Yeah, it can't be. I mean, look, you go to a regular meeting, you have to show your face too. You're not going to walk into a meeting with a bag on your head, But we do at least encourage people. There are people who haven't turned their camera on, but they have written in the chat, I'm here, I'm this, blah, 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 blah. That's fine. So yes,
Sure.
it is anonymous in that way. You don't have to put your name, but we do ask you just to put your camera on for a second so that we know who we're dealing with, so that the group is safe.
Great.
Okay. Quickly about the Friday at Super Soul Farm.
October 11th.
Yes, October 11th. We're going to start with 9:45. We're going to start with coffee and tea.
Okay.
At 9:45, you get a coffee. At 9:45, there's orientation. At 10 o'clock, we get to a get to know you circle. We kind of introduce ourselves. Then we do a shake and break, which is sort of like move a muscle, change a thought. We kind of get that going. At 10:40, we talk about 12 steps and anarthas and recovery and how it relates to our Bhakti practice. And this is good for anyone. We get a handout exercise. We'll be doing handout exercises in 12-step Bhakti practices in simple, tangible ways that we can work on those. And then at 11:30, we share what we wrote. Then we have a break for lunch. Then we have a quiet guided meditation at 1:45. And then we read from Nectar of Instruction and we talk about steps 1, 2, and 3. Then another handout, and then we have a BRG meeting. And then you, my dear, are going to end it with kirtan.
All righty. Looking forward to that. And that's when everyone starts piling in for the Wisdom of the Sages retreat. So if you're thinking about coming to the Wisdom of the Sages retreat, you can do that. If you're interested in staying a day later, there's another side note. We're going to have our Seva weekend or Seva day on Monday. We're going to do a lot of planting, gardening, chopping wood, stacking wood, stuff like that. But also, Jiva is going to be with Wisdom of the Sages for the retreat in January at the Govardhan Eco Village. And we're really looking forward to that, Jiva. So many people, both in GEV and in Italy, when you come, they just say, "Oh, this is one of the highlights of the whole trip." I never even thought the Bhakti recovery was for me, but they're getting so much out of it, and I'm super grateful for you for that. And you're doing great work in this world, and I'm glad you're.
I owe so much to you and to Kastuba, and I love you guys so much. By the way, quick announcement.
Say it.
There's supposed to be, Mahatma Prabhu is supposed to do a talk with us at the Bhakti Recovery Group today, but unfortunately we have to reschedule for next week. So just announcing that for everybody, please know that there's not going to be at 10 o'clock.
Okay. Gotcha.
Okay.
Anyway, thank you for being with us. Keep doing what you're doing.
Thank you so much. Thank you for your support and everything. I love you, man. I really do.
I love you too. Love you too. Bhakti Recovery Group. Check it out. Their podcast. Go to Apple Podcasts if you're not and subscribe to it right now. There's a lot of ways to practice bhakti, and the whole movement is becoming bigger and broader and wider. And if you're getting into this and you're new to it, it's better time than ever to get into it. And remember, the real important thing is part of our own healing is to give this stuff away to other people, because everyone's going through their own. It's not just you going through your hell. Everybody's going through their own personal hell right now. It's just part of having a body and a mind. Thanks everybody for joining us. If you like what me and Kastuba and Mara are doing here, go to wisdomofthesages.com, become a supporting community member. Is that what it's called?
Yeah.
Supporting community member. We appreciate it. That's the only way we're going, is because a lot of you guys are stepping up and saying, you know what, I'm going to contribute something because I get something out of this. Thank you very much. We're very grateful for it. Kastuba's back tomorrow, right? 7 a.m. tomorrow. We're going to be back there. And going to visit my mom today in New York City. Looking forward to that. I got to break it to her that she's only 97 years old, about to be 98.
You don't have to break it to her.
She thinks she's 98. She's about to be 99, but she did the math wrong.
I think it's okay. I think she's allowed to be however old she wants to be at this point.
I guess she can. Anyway, thank you, people. Beautiful day for a beautiful day. Thanks to Jiva. Let the magic continue to flow. Haribol.